A friend of mine who's a church leader in another town wrote to me yesterday and said that as he talks to church members and even as he talks to people in his town, he's noticing and hearing that people are talking about feeling more and more disconnected all the time as we go through our COVID protocols and everything is kind of locked down right now. And so he asked a question. He said, "What do you think we can do about this? How can we make people feel more connected?" I didn't know an answer to give him at the time, but I started writing to him anyway, and I stumbled into something that I think is actually true. Has that ever happened to you? You don't know the answer, but as you go, you kind of stumble across something. Here's what I told him, and I think it's worth sharing with you. I wrote him back and said, "I don't think anything's going to fix this. I don't think there's any way we can make people feel connected until we're connected again. There is nothing we can do to replace being together." For example, it was great for Sarah and me to talk to our families over Zoom over the Christmas break, but talking to them on a computer wasn't the same thing as being with them. I think one of the things we're learning through this whole thing is that we took for granted the fact that we could get together at church, that we could come to church on Sunday morning, that we could see one another, that we could go and hang out together. We took that for granted. And maybe right now we're understanding and learning that that really is important. We used to just sort of slough it off. Some people just showed up to church whenever they felt like it, but all of a sudden now we're realizing being able to be together is important. I don't think there's any way we're going to replace that until we're able to be together again. But on the other hand, we need to do what we can do. And so for the last several months, I have really upped my game in terms of texting people and calling people and writing people letters and checking in on people. And I think we need to do what we can do. The fact that I write to someone and check in with them and call them or FaceTime with people isn't going to replace being able to be together with them. Video sermons are not going to replace being able to be together on Sunday morning, but we need to keep doing the things that we can do. We need to build the bridge as best we can to get us to the next part. And so that was my response to him. Number one, that there's nothing we can do to make people feel less disconnected. They're going to feel disconnected. We are disconnected. But number two, don't wallow in that. Don't just leave it that way. Don't just give up. But make an effort to connect to each other as best you can right now. The Apostle Paul felt this sort of thing as he writes to his good friend Timothy. He writes to him from a prison cell, and he says this at the start of 2 Timothy in chapter 1, verse 3. He says, "I thank God whom I serve as my forefathers did with a clear conscience. I thank God as night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. I recall your tears. I long to see you so that I might be filled with joy." Paul says, as I sit in this prison cell, I think about you, Timothy. I think about my Christian brothers and sisters. I long to see you. I remember you in my prayers. I wish we could be together, and I'm looking forward to the time when I can see you so that I might be filled with joy again. The analogy that comes to mind to me is sort of like a campfire. When you're starting a campfire, there's always that moment where you don't really have a fire yet, right? Something's happening, but you don't really have a fire yet. You've just got sort of a smoldering bunch of embers. And you've got two choices at that point. You can either give up and say, well, I'm not going to have a fire at all. Or you can blow on it and start it going. You can encourage it. You can blow on those coals until you actually do get a fire. We're kind of in a place right now where we've got to make a choice. Are we just going to give up and say, well, we got nothing? Or are we going to fan into flame the good things that are around us? It's not the same. We are not together. We are going to feel disconnected. But don't just give up that way. Don't just say, well, that's it. That's all I've got. Make every effort to reach out to somebody. Make every effort to connect to people. When you think about them, pray for them. When you think about them, write to them. When you think about them, do something. Do what you can do right now so that when we actually are back together again, we really enjoy that so much more. I think we've taken for granted how important it is to be together. Let's never, ever do that again.